Welcome back to part 2 of I Catch Killers with our guest, Ali Colquitt. In part 1, Ali has told us about a very personal journey, how her dependency on alcohol led her down a path where she worked as a dancer and a stripper in bars. She then found herself in a world where drug use was the norm. She became dependent on drugs, then started selling drugs to support her habit. Well, the inevitable happened, and Ali was arrested. We're going to pick up part 2 from there. Then we'll talk about how Ali totally turned her life around. It's a real inspirational story. So, Ali, welcome back.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to start on a bit of a low for part 2 because this is when the police have knocked on your door and you realise that life's not going to be the same. But you hadn't fully appreciated the seriousness of the allegations against you. So can you talk us through, because I don't think a lot of people, majority of people, have never been arrested. So they wouldn't know what it's like for the knock on the door. Do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, sure. So the detectives knocked on my door and they said, are you Jade? And I said yes. So Jade's the name that I use at work. Name. Yeah. So they held up a photo of me on a piece of paper with my name. They said, "Is this you?" And I said yes. And they said, "You're under arrest." They said some other stuff, but I can't remember what it was.
You're not obliged to say anything unless you wish to do so, but whatever you say may later be used in evidence.
That's the one.
Do you understand that? Sorry.
Yeah, that's
just
the one.
Just going back.
Does that feel good?
Yeah, I feel better now. Got that out of my system.
Okay, good. Yeah, so they said that, and then I said, yeah, hang on a sec, I'll just grab my phone. And she said something like, "Don't go back inside the premises." I think she thought like there might be, I was reaching for a weapon or something. And I was like really confused because I was like, I just need to grab my bag. So anyway, I just said to her, like, I just want to grab my bag and I'll be right with you, because I wanted my phone and that. And so, yeah, I grabbed my bag, got my phone, grabbed a jumper. I was wearing my nightie and a pair of flip-flops and my jumper. And they said, "Do you want to go in the car? Do you want to come with us in the car, or we can send a truck?" Like as in the paddy wagon. Yeah. I was like, "Oh, I'll just come in the car." Like, because I'm still thinking they just want to have a chat, you know? Like, I understand I'm under arrest, but at the same time, like, I thought I'd go down there, it'd be an hour or two and I'd come home.
Yeah.
And I was in deep shit, but I didn't think I was going to go to jail. I had no idea about that. So, yeah, they took me down to Maroubra. That was the closest station to where I was living, and they put me in a cell, and I started to pretty much feel sick immediately.
Yep.
I was already pretty unwell, but yeah, they put me in a cell. It was really cold. I just remember it was really cold, and the guy in the cell next to me was having like a ice psychosis, and he had a blanket in there, so I saw it on my way past, but he was smashing his head against the wall and carrying on, and apparently I heard them talking, and that he'd been in there because he just put his girlfriend in hospital, so he'd basically just bashed her to the point of hospitalisation.
Yeah.
And I was just pissed off that he had a blanket and I didn't, so I'm like, well, why is the woman basher getting a blanket and I don't get a blanket?
Yeah.
So I was just focusing on that.
So you still had attitude?
I'm freezing, right?
Yeah.
I've got my hoodie. I'm like wrapped up in a ball, shivering with my hoodie wrapped around me, like trying to stay warm. And they were like, I said, "Oh, can I have a blanket?" a few times, and they were like, "No, well, there's only one blanket and he's got it." And I thought that was really unfair. But other than that,
untrue.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, like, I just remember they photographed me. They photographed every single one of my tattoos, which there are many, and they logged them all into some database, identifying markers and whatnot, and took my fingerprints. And what they didn't know about me was that I had been arrested before, years and years and years ago, up in Queensland. I'd been arrested for a break and enter that happened, that ended up getting thrown out of court. Right. And it was a ridiculous scenario, and I won't go into it, but basically the truth is I didn't actually do anything wrong. I was just with some people that broke into their mother's house, and the mother pressed charges. It was dumb. So anyway, I had been arrested and I had been fingerprinted and I had been interviewed before, and I learnt a lot through that process.
Yep.
And because the charges got thrown out because it was so dumb, actually there was no conviction or anything recorded, but the New South Wales police didn't know that. So they thought that this was the first time I'd ever had any interaction with the police, and basically their entire investigation was resting on me rolling.
Right.
which was like telling them information about who I was getting my drugs off. And it's my belief that they probably thought there was a syndicate running or something, and they thought they were going to take down like a big syndicate. They're probably
starting at the bottom with
starting at the bottom with me, because I had no priors and I was obviously an addict. So what they did was they put me under surveillance for I think 3 months or something, and they sent an undercover in to buy drugs off me, which I sold her drugs. She was introduced to me by someone I trusted, and so yeah, it was all very weird. And I did have an inkling that something was up, because by this point I was extremely unwell, and this woman was sort of really persistent on buying drugs off me.
Yeah.
Like kept messaging me, kept asking, and I was like, look, I'm not, and I remember even texting her, I'm not a drug dealer. Like, go away, basically. I don't really know you. And also there was one point just before my arrest that I tried to get clean. I tried to get clean, and I went down to my sister's house on the South Coast, and it did not go well. I locked myself in a spare bedroom and tried to
just going full on cold
detox.
turkey.
Yeah, and it ended badly. It ended in like a big screaming match, and I ended up going home. And I had told this woman on the text, look, I'm going down the South Coast to try and sort my life out. Like, just leave me alone. Like, I just needed to get away from everything. And she was really persistent. So this was this cop, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, the whole thing was too hard. So I came home and just went back into it. And not long after that was the arrest. So they basically had this investigation going on at this drug dealing syndicate, whatnot. And they thought that I was going to be the linchpin to this investigation because I was a vulnerable, naive, whatever, first timer, you know. And so they took me into the interview room at Maroubra, and they basically said to me, look, you've got 9 charges on this sheet. Each one of these charges carries a maximum penalty of 25 years. And this one here is like a serious charge. It's called ongoing supply. So it means that if you sell drugs to someone within the space of 30 days for more than 3 times, that's just as bad as if you'd sold 10 Ks of heroin. It's the same penalty.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're going to go to jail for a really long time. And I was like, okay. And then they said, you need to tell us everything. And I just went, I need to see my lawyer. Like, that's what I'd learnt from my previous arrest. Don't talk to the cops. Don't say anything. Ask to speak to your lawyer, and don't say anything on record until you've got a lawyer.
Yeah.
So that piece of information saved my ass. So I didn't say anything. I just clammed up and I said no. And so they basically were kind of like, oh, I could see her face drop, you know, the detective's face just dropped. Anyway, they sent me back to my cell, and that was it. Next day, the next morning, they took me over to Surrey Hills.
Yeah. So
it was the 21st of December.
To the holding cells there.
To the holding cells at Surrey Hills.
Yeah.
And I was in there for I don't know how many days. So the detox had started by this point, and I was pretty messy.
Describe the cells down there, because I know the cells, and they're not very nice, but yeah.
They're notorious. So anyone who's been in Surrey Hills cells knows that it is the most disgusting place I've ever seen in my life. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It was Christmas time, so there was no availability. So all the women were crammed together in one cell, and the rest of the cells were full of men that were screaming, hollering, carrying on. We weren't allowed to shower because the men were showering. So there was no capacity for us, and there was no staff or whatever. So we just weren't allowed to shower. So we stayed in there for a few days, I think, waiting for the truck. They were on reduced staffing again. Yep. So everything was like kind of working really slow and backwards and behind. So I think there was like 4 or 5 of us crammed into a cell and sharing one toilet. And at least one of us was in the blue suit.
Yeah.
You know, the blue suit,
yeah.
The famous blue suit, which is that forensic onesie that they put people in who are, you know, I don't actually know why.
The clothes have probably been seized.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so, there was one woman who was like ranting and raving and covered in blood, and she was spitting and carrying on, and she was really unwell. Another lady who was coming off ice and picking at her, like, individually.
Festering sores.
Yeah, but she was picking her hairs out of her legs one by one.
Oh, right.
And she was actually really nice, that girl. She was the first person that, because she got arrested and she decided to eat all of her drugs. So she was up for like 4 or 5 days because she just started to come up from the drugs. So her and I got chatting, and because she had nothing but time, she gave me her blanket to use as a pillow. She's like, I'm not going to use it because I'm going to be up for a few days. So here, have my blanket. And so I had a pillow and a blanket, which was really nice of her. Yeah, it was luxury. It was the last pillow I saw for about 6 months. Yeah. And so she actually, I said to her, look, it looks like I'm going to jail. Like, this is my first time. Can you tell me some stuff? So over the next 2 days while we're in Surrey Hills cells, I just picked her brain. She'd been in a few times. And I just said, what's this, what's that? I got as much information out of her as possible.
You were lucky you had that, someone that you could get that, because if you approach people like that normally, they'll see you as if you approach the wrong person, you've just yourself, basically. Yeah,
well, she did say that to me. She's like, don't ask people why they're in. Yeah. And I think the first thing I asked when I finally got to Silverwater, we were in one of these big pens, and they have 30 of you in this big pen while you're getting processed and photographed. And I think the first person I spoke to, I was like, so what are you in for? And she just looked at me like, you newbie. Yeah. But I was lucky for a few reasons. I think I don't look it now, but back then I looked intimidating. Yep. I'm covered in tattoos, and I had black hair, and I have a real good stare. So I didn't ever get stood over.
Okay. That's good.
And also I'm very, very, very quick to adapt to whatever situation I'm in because of, I don't know, whether it's trauma or my past, whatever. I'm very hyper vigilant, and I'm hyper aware of what's going on around me. So I worked out
who the players were.
I worked it out instantly. So whatever room I was in, I clocked, who was mentally unwell, who was likely to be violent, who was likely to be a friend and a foe and an ally. I clocked all that within seconds. Yeah. So, I figured this chick out. She was smaller than me. She was a working girl, so she's, on the streets, but she's not violent and she's not a threat. So I basically took her to a friend straight away, you know. And she told me lots of information about the jail, what to do, what not to do, what to be prepared for, and all that sort of thing. And if I didn't understand something, I would just ask her.
And what sort of tips? Can you remember the sort of tips?
It was real basic stuff, like when you get your food, make sure you do this, put your food here so that people don't steal it. Make sure you get your milk, and you basically just telling me how to survive. You get a bowl, a cup, and a plate. Don't lend it to anyone. Keep it. They're yours. They're the only ones you get. Things you're not going to get a pillow because people will steal them, so there'll be no pillow, basically. Don't lend, don't borrow, just little things like that.
Little tips,
I can't really remember specifically, but she was good. She was helpful.
That would have made a big difference for her.
Yeah, it did. And she was funny too. I actually took a liking to her, and she ended up being my first cellie at Mullewa. Yeah. We went into the Brady wing, which is also well known for being disgusting, and that's where we after you go from Surrey Hills, they transport you in a truck to induction. You go through induction, and then you go to your first wing.
How did you feel with this? Because up until that point you were living a fairly carefree life, and you would have known you're living life on the edge on different things, but you wouldn't have seen yourself as a bad person or a menace to society.
No, I didn't see myself as a bad person, and it was really, really strange when the police were talking to me like I was a piece of shit. I was really confused by that. I was thinking to myself, you've got me confused with some scumbag. Why are you speaking to me like a scumbag? I was really a bit put out by it. Yeah. And then I realized, they just see me as one of them, and I am one of them. To them, I may as well just be a number, and I was. Yeah. So the minute I got arrested, I was treated like I was just a crim, and that's they didn't give a flying if it was my first time. They didn't give a shit if it was my 5th time, 10th time. As far as I'm concerned, as soon as you're arrested, whether you've been charged or tried or convicted or not, you're a piece of shit. Yeah. Yeah. And that's how it was. And so that's how I got treated pretty much the whole time, with the exception of a few really lovely people. I was treated like that the whole time throughout my incarceration. I'll never forget while they were while I was in Surrey Hills, they're about to transport us onto the truck, and there was this moment where there's these like chicken pens, like these metal crates that they put you in, like they're all individual, and they put the girls and the trans men together, and then they put the men in another part, but you're all like, it's all open, so you can all see each other and interact, and the guys were like, you know, like howling sort of horrible things at us. There was about 3 girls and 1 trans man or trans woman, sorry, and they were saying some pretty awful shit, and one guy got his dick out, and I think he thought he was going to shock me. Yeah. Because he could tell that I was green, like he knew I was brand new, and I looked over him and I just went, like, I thought to myself, mate, you don't know where I've just come from. Like, I don't give a flying about. Yeah. That's not shocking me, mate. Like, I just survived King's Cross. Like, come on. Like, no. So it didn't even make a dent. Like, it was just like nothing, you know. But they could tell, like the Crims could tell I was new. Everybody could tell. Yeah. I had it written on my face. Yeah, it's
like, hard to hide. Isn't it?
Yeah. So then they put you on the truck. And,
did you at some point in time? Because I would imagine you'd be sitting there going, "But as you've talked, you got it wrong. Like, what? Where's my bail? Like, what happened? What?"
Yeah. So I did say to the judge, like when I first got in front of the judge, it was by AVL, so it was via video link. Yeah. And she said all these judgy words and stuff, and I was so confused because my lawyer was he was completely inept, and the judge was like, "Look, you're being remanded in custody," and I said, "Yeah, but what does that mean?" And she's like, "You're going to jail." And I was like, slammed the thing down or whatever. Like, I don't know if she had a gavel or whatever, but she basically, you know, closed the book on me and said, "You're going to prison." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like thinking, because I didn't understand what was going on, and I had nobody telling me what was going on. I had no information coming in. I didn't even know if I was allowed to, like my lawyer was someone who my father decided to hire in desperation, thinking that he was getting a recommendation of someone through a family friend or whatever. And the guy turned out to be it was like getting a traffic cop for a murder investigation. Yeah.
You need a criminal solicitor.
Yes, and he was not up to the job. He had no idea. He was just all excited about the fact that the ABC wanted to interview him. And I was like, wow. Could you tell me what's going on with my case? Like, But anyway, the point is, like, I had no idea what was going on. I was completely out of my depth, and I couldn't get information out of anyone. No one wanted to give me information. They were just like, no, you're just part of a roller coaster. You're just part of a conveyor belt, and it's just assumed that you know what's going to happen. Yeah. No one gives you like an information pack.
And you're basically just sitting there being told when to eat, when to sleep, what to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's no like welcome to prison information pack. None of that. It's not like that.
It's traumatic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's traumatic. Yeah.
Yeah, we hear it from we've heard it from men's point of view, but going into a woman's prison, all the fears that men have are the same for a woman going in there.
Yeah, and like, I mean, look, it was pretty traumatic, and it was also like disgusting. Yeah. Like, as a woman, like, there's certain level of hygiene that we need to maintain, and there's like not being able to shower for a few days was pretty and like the cells are disgusting and dirty, and like you can pick up diseases in there. Like, it's just on a basic human level, regardless of the crime, regardless of whatever the person's done. A lot of these people haven't even been convicted of a crime. They're being remanded in custody, which means they have not been convicted of an offence. The very least, we can provide them with a semi-clean environment. Like, let's not, like, you know, give them diseases as well as traumatise them. Like, I just feel like it could be done a little better.
There's a lot of disadvantages in the remand, and at a conversation we were having the other day, and to explain that, when you were in prison, you were coming down from your drug addiction and alcohol addiction and everything else. Yeah. So you're detoxing or forced detox. Yeah. And there was because you were in remand for a long time, there was no option to get onto any programs?
Yeah, no. So remand means that you have been you've been held in custody without a conviction. It means that you're waiting to go in front of a judge to have your day in court. Yep. But the the courts or the police have decided that you're too much of a threat to the community, so you need to be held in custody while you wait for your day. And so because of the seriousness of one of my charges, it automatically remands you to custody. So, yeah, I didn't get to go in front of a judge for another 14 months, which is crazy. But, you know, while I was in custody and being on remand, it means that you can't access, you know, any of the drug and alcohol rehabilitation programs. You can't access like counselling. You can't access a lot of stuff because while you're on remand, like I said, you haven't been convicted of a crime. They can still collect evidence.
Yeah.
They can still like pick up things that you might say to a therapist or a counsellor and use it as evidence against you to build a case. So to keep, I guess, that from happening, they just don't offer a lot of help. And you can't even really see a SAPO. A SAPO is a services and programs officer in jail, and that's someone who, you know, their job is, I guess, to be like a little bit of a link from an inmate to the outside world. So, like, can you help me find a rehab? Can you help me get in touch with my kids?
But you don't have, when you're on remand,
you can't really access a SAPO at all. Yeah.
That, on the back of what we were discussing the other day, I looked in an article, Philip Bolton, the former president of the Criminal Defence Lawyers Association. He was talking about the very same thing in an article that the prisoners on remand, because they keep getting moved around, they haven't got accesses to the services, and it's self-defeating to a degree and a big disadvantage to people on remand. I hadn't even thought of that, in all honesty. But
it's really difficult. And also you don't get information. Yeah. So it's really difficult to access outside information while you're in custody. So what a lot of the prisoners say is they just say, keep your head in the jail. And what that means is just keep your thoughts and feelings and emotions and everything just in here. Because if you start to think about when you might be getting out or when you might see your family again or any of that stuff, you'll drive yourself insane. So keep your head in the jail. And so I stuck by that advice for 14 months and my date just kept getting moved back and back and back. You know, they adjourn it for 3 months and then another 4 months. And so I thought it could be, I have no idea whether it's going to be next week or next year. So it was really difficult headspace to be in. I never knew when I was going to get out.
And that keep your head in jail. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I think I read that in preparing for the interview, and it was something that made me very curious. But I do understand it, that if you start dreaming about being on the outside, it's going to play with your mind. Yeah,
it does. So as for all intents and purposes, this is your world now. This is your home. Yeah. And even if you're going to be here for 3 months or 3 years, that's the headspace that you need to be in. Just for today, this is where you exist. Yeah. So you are not someone with a life and a job and children and all that stuff on the outside. You're just an inmate. You're just a number. You're in green. So for today, this is your world. And so your world shrinks. It becomes really, really small. And, you know, your day-to-day life is the prison. And you would do well to not think about anything. Like, I shut out my entire everything from outside. I was lucky because I don't have kids. Yeah. Like, I can't imagine what that does to women who have children. You know, there's women who go and they give birth, so they come in pregnant. They'll go and give birth and they'll give them like maybe 3 days in the hospital and then they just take them back. Yeah. They take the baby away and then they take them back to jail. And it's just heartbreaking because you think about those kids, like those kids didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, and they've been punished.
They're being punished, and that we don't know the physiological, psychological, emotional effects that separation's doing. So I really do believe to my core that the way we incarcerate women in this country, like, it has to be different because women are different. You know, we are different. Like, we're mothers and the way we operate is different.
Just sitting here talking to you now, like what we talked about, keep your head in the jail and the emotional side of it, it's got me thinking while we're talking that I've sat opposite a lot of people that have done time in jail, mostly men, and I haven't heard them talk like that or talk about such the emotional side of it, and that might be that female take on it, that the emotion that's attached to it, whereas a bloke would be, I can handle this, or the talk tough. But
well, if you ask any screw, like, and I talked to quite a few of them when I was in there, is it easier to deal with men or women? They'll always say men.
Yeah.
Women are too emotional. That's what they say. That the emotional stuff, I think that's what they find women so much harder to look after, because we are emotion driven.
Yeah.
We try to, like, you see female, crims and stuff trying to be staunch, but really, like, you scratch under the surface and there's just a scared girl there. And that's the same with men, but they're just better at hiding it.
A few more layers with the men.
A few more layers.
You get there.
A bit more conditioning, I think. Yeah.
But that's interesting. How do you think we could adjust prisons for women?
Well, first of all, I think they need to look at, there's like smart boffins that do criminology or stuff like that, and they look at criminogenic factors and what causes criminal behaviour and all this stuff. And a lot of the time with women, their criminal behaviour is based around addiction, and it's based around, most women are victims of crime before they even hit the system. So I think we need to, and I do believe the system is starting to adjust, but we need to look at women in a trauma-informed way. So by the time they get to prison, yes, they are criminals. Yes, they have committed a crime, but they are many other things as well.
Yeah.
They're traumatised women. Like 100% of women who go to prison in New South Wales are victims of some type of trauma. 100% of them.
Yeah.
So and we're talking serious trauma. We're not talking like, oh, she, got shut in her room once when she was a child. Like, some really horrible stuff that they've endured in their lives. So, treating with a little bit of dignity and respect, and looking at their offending from a medical perspective rather than a criminal perspective. So a lot of addiction science now is saying, they've been saying since the 1930s that addiction is a medical issue. It's not a criminal issue, but we still treat it as a criminal issue. So if a woman is an addict and her offending is directly related to her addiction, or even secondary related to her addiction, looking at that and actually taking that into account, and also taking into account, does she have children? And is by locking her up going to cause more harm than not locking her up? So and the harm on the children, taking that into account. So is there a way that we can address her offending and her issues underlying her offending? Is there a way that we can do that in the community? Is there a way that we can do that in a gentler way that's going to have the same outcome? Of course there is. We can put people on the moon. We can do this. You know what I mean? If we put the time, the energy and the resources into this, we can do it. It's just that we don't want to do it because it's easier for us to look at women and men in jail and say they're bad people, they're criminals, and just throw them in jail, chuck them in jail and throw away the key. It's so much easier for us to do that as a society than to actually look at the human behind.
It is, and that's what I'm certainly discovering in what I'm doing since I've left the police and speaking to people and looking at the criminal world from different perspectives. But we put people away in jail and it makes us feel all good, like we'll tuck them away in jail. We don't have to worry about them now. But people come out, and what comes out is going to impact on society.
Yep.
And also, and we had a conversation with Tim Watson-Munro, a psychologist, criminal psychologist, and very, very experienced. And I think he made the point, and it's not the exact figures, but he was saying for each prisoner that is incarcerated that costs so much, might be, let's say, $100,000, just to round it off, $100,000 a year to keep you in jail. We could give each one of those prisoners their own personal psychologist to help deal with their issues or whatever, and maybe we've just got to look at things a little bit different.
Well, we've got a program. So I work for an organisation called Women's Justice Network.
Yep.
We've got a program that's been they've had it evaluated, and they've had the data sort of come back, and we've got a 93% success rate of keeping women out of jail, and our program costs a fraction to run. It costs a fraction of what it does to keep a woman in jail. And I went through that program and I've stayed out. And many other women have gone through that program and stayed out. And it's a mentoring-based program, so basically matching a trained volunteer in the community with an inmate who's about to get out, and you match them up, and so they form this friendship, and then that person follows that woman through her journey when she gets out. So she has this supportive person by her side the whole time, and the difference that makes is insane.
Yeah.
And doing stuff like creative solutions like this is so powerful, but I don't know why we're not doing more of it, because we have the data, we know it works, we know it's cheaper.
Yeah.
So why aren't we doing it? I think that's the big question.
Is it because we feel comfortable as a society or community saying, well, if they've done the crime, they can do the time and we're going to get tough on law and order? Is that?
Yeah, I think so. But the thing is, like, they can say, oh, they've done the crime, they need to do the time. And they do the time, and they never stop doing the time.
Yeah.
If you tell a kid that they're bad and you tell them that enough, they're going to go out and do bad shit, right?
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. And then you go and send them to jail and you tell them they're bad and you keep telling them they're bad. They're going to get out of jail and do more, even worse shit.
Yeah.
And so this is just continually going on and on and on in this vicious cycle till you get these really highly skilled career criminals coming through the system who are just been in and out their entire lives and there's no hope of retribution. I think there's got to be a better way.
So what was the program called again?
So the organisation's called Women's Justice Network, and their program is a mentoring program. It's just Women's Justice Network mentoring program. So they run that. They've been running it for several years now. It's still going, and it's really a great organisation and a great program. And
people to connect with the program or whatever, what's the process that they've got to go through?
They recruit women to become mentors. You can do an expression of interest on their website. So it's www.wjn.org.au, and you fill out an expression of interest to become a mentor. And then if you get accepted, you go through the training. The training's free, but it takes like 2 days, and then they'll match you with an inmate, a female inmate, and they match you based on like mutual interests, and like they don't just match you with anyone. Like they'll match you based on things that you have in common. So like when I got matched when I was in jail, I got matched with a young girl who was at uni, and I thought, why the have you matched me with her? Like, she's a child. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But they had a bigger plan. Like, they knew that I needed, like, we had similar interests and values. We're both really into animals. We're both vegan. We're both like kind-hearted, like soft-hearted people. And they could see that I needed a friend who was outside of that world, and they knew that we would make a good match, and we did. And so it's not so much about what's she going to teach me, it was what she's going to bring to my life when I get out. And she was there for me through court. She was there for me through my first like 5 or 6 mental breakdowns that I had when I got out. Like, she was a friend that just stayed with me throughout my journey, and it was what I needed.
One good person can change someone's life, can't they? Someone that believes in you, someone that supports you. It was amazing. When I first met her, I was so confused because, like, her and a few other people that I met along my journey, I just didn't understand why they were being nice to me. And I didn't understand why anyone would want to be nice to me, because I really believed that I was like rotten, you know? And the way they treated me and the respect they gave me and the kindness they showed me, it made me want to be better, and it made me want to be that for someone else. They basically showed me how to be a good person. And I always had it in me, but I just believed that I was, a piece of shit. Well, I've got a quote here that when you went to jail, that you said, I felt like a shameful creature and the whole world had turned its back on me. I felt like the best thing I could do was get through the prison sentence and then go somewhere no one knew me, change my name, sulk away into the shadows and hide. I wrote it down because it made me sad thinking about it, but that's what you took into prison with you, and that's how you felt when you're in there.
Yeah, I did. I had thought, like, what's going to be your game plan when you get out? And I did think, well, I could leave and go somewhere where no one will know me, and I'll start over, and I'll be happy to just get a job, like, packing beans into cans. I've said that before. Like, that would make me happy. Like, for all this shit and all this trauma and all this heartache and bullshit that I've had to put up with, I just want a simple life. I just want to go somewhere and just nobody knows me. No one's seen my picture in the paper. No one. Like, I can just go somewhere quiet and just be a nobody and get a dog, and I'll just be, I'll be happy.
Peaceful, content.
Peaceful. And like, I was so over it that's what I wanted for my future. I didn't know that, the world had different plans for me.
Well, on different plans, there was something in prison. I think we can talk about it because you actually stole it. I think you stole it.
Yeah, I did.
There was your turning point, and I think it's quite interesting. But you saw, and it was something that was pinned on a wall and written, and said, no matter how far you have fallen, you will see how your experiences can benefit others.
Yes.
And then you stole that.
I stole it. I ripped it off the wall and took it home with me back
Yep.
to my cell.
Yep.
So what it actually is a part of AA literature.
Right.
I didn't know that at the time because
Okay.
someone had printed it out and laminated, I think. And it was a piece of pink paper with 12 promises written down on it that come straight out of the AA literature. And I read them and I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And that one of them said, no matter how far down the scale we've gone, we'll see how our experience can benefit others.
Yeah.
And that struck me like a lightning bolt. I was like, I don't have to sulk away and hide. I can use this experience to speak about it and to make sure that someone else who's suffering and who's believes that they're worthless and grew up without self-esteem or whatever can turn things around. Like it lit that little fire in me again.
Yeah.
It lit that fire up and I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, because I've always had a headstrong, willful, energy.
Yeah.
And these ideas energize me. So I got energized by this idea of like, no, I'm going to take this on head on and I'm going to like eat my shame.
Yeah.
And I'm going to own it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go out there into the world and do whatever I can to make this experience less for someone else.
How long had you been in prison at that point in time when you came to that?
It's probably
that
6 to 8 months, I think.
Right.
Yeah. And then not long after that, I hit my physical rock bottom in jail. Like I got into a pretty bad punch on, and
okay. Everyone loves a prison fight scene. What happened there?
I just got into a punch on with this chick, and it was over something dumb, but I was really upset that I had been in a physical altercation because I was trying to be all zen, like I was having like a spiritual awakening. I was reading like all these yoga books and like learning about non-violence and eating healthy and all this stuff. And then like the prison was really getting to me. The people were really getting to me. All of the anger and all that stuff was really getting to me. And so I got into a punch on and I remember being so upset because I felt like the prison had gotten to me.
Yeah.
And I had resorted to violence and I didn't want that to be who I was.
Yeah.
And I spent the next like 2 weeks in this like really deep depression, really deep depression.
Was it because you thought, look what they're turning me into this violent?
This is who I used to be.
Yeah.
I've always been angry and a little bit violent. I don't want to be this person anymore. I want to be that other person.
The Zen person.
The Zen person. I want to be that, like the person that helps others and spreads kindness and this place is breaking me.
Yeah.
And I met someone at that point. I met a friend who like rescued me from that space. So she was living in colloquially known as the murder house, but N4, which was the house where all the long-termers lived.
Right.
And
why was it called the murder house?
Well,
the
because they were all in there for a long time.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I was living in the drug house at that time, which was the people that were in the drug rehab program. So I'd moved myself into that house trying to get into the drug program, only to find out I couldn't do it. But everyone in that house was mental. They were all using and it was just crazy.
Did you stay away from drugs in prison?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Was that a conscious decision that you made?
Yes.
Yeah.
Early on in my like incarceration, I think it was just after I'd gone through detox, I made a promise to myself that I would use every ounce of energy that I have in the world to not use.
Yeah.
I would stubborn it out. I was like, this is like... And
I would imagine for an addict or anyone in prison to find some peace or just escape, there would be a temptation there.
There was no temptation for me because I'm so stubborn that I made that decision to not use or drink. Like I can I don't know, I can outstubborn everyone that I've ever met.
Yeah.
So I basically made the decision to outstubborn my addiction. I was just like, I will not use. I'll die before I use again.
Yeah.
And I made that choice.
So if you can turn your stubbornness to good.
Yeah. And I did. And there was one point where one of my cellmates was using, like she was smoking bube and stuff and in the cell, and I was so mad. So I was sticking my head right next to the window to suck in the fresh air because I was like, can you stop? Like just with that. Like I was so mad, so I basically turned my head to the opposite, to not use. And and so this friend that I met, she kind of took me out of that house and she got me moved into her house, and everything got easier from that point.
Yeah.
So that house was a lot more calm. Everybody was there for a long time, so they treated their house like their home, and it was a much better environment for me.
And you found some salvation too in your art whilst you're in there. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was quite funny. Like I started through this friendship as well. I started to, people started to come to me and get me to draw. They found out that I was good at art and that I could draw. And they used to come up to me and ask me to draw pictures of their kids. Like people would bring like a little tiny tattered photograph of their children and be like, can you draw this? And I would turn it into like an artwork for them.
Wow.
And especially the Koori girls, like I felt really special to be able to do that for them, because some of them, that was all they had.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is something I can do, like, and I started charging people, and I just started making a lot of money, and I ended up with like people working for me. I started this little entrepreneur in jail, and I told the story about how the officers found my book. I had a book with like what people owed me. Yeah. And they thought I was selling.
Oh no, she's at it again.
Yeah. And they're like, what are you up to? And I had to sort of explain my way out of that. But
that gave you a sense of self-worth too? Like people were respecting you for something that you could do?
I was like amazed by like how well I was doing in jail. I was like, damn, like I'm an entrepreneur in here. Like this is crazy. So if I can make it work in here, I can make it work out there. Yeah. Like I have to be able to.
Well, this is a podcast, and so I'm not very good at this, but this is some of your artwork that you brought along today.
I brought you a print of some of my artwork.
How? That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Really, really interesting. How do people get hold of that?
Oh, I have a website. So my website's www.allyjadeart, so ALLYJADEART.com. Yeah. And my art's all up there, and I sell prints, and then I donate the proceeds of the sales back to the program, the Women's Justice Network.
Wow,
so,
what a great thing.
Yeah, because I run a youth program, and so what I realised through this process was that the art was healing me. Yeah, I was able to channel a lot of my anguish and stuff into the art, and I thought like there's something in this. And so later on, when I was able to come back and do some work in the community, I told my boss at the Women's Justice Network, I said, I want to work with art. Like I want to use art as my way. So I got the opportunity to run a youth program in juvie. Yeah. So I go back into the juvie and I do art with the girls in juvie. And so the sales from these artworks, they fund that program. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And it really flies back to that. Your experiences can benefit others, and that's coming out because I think going into juvie with an artist like with the quality of art that it's really interesting art. It sort of captures your eye, but with your experience, like the girls that you're talking to are going to be listening to.
Yeah. Well, the program we kind of we rewrote it so that it's art based, but it's also lived experience. So we take women in. We take women who've got a story to share, and we go into the juvie and we sit with the girls and they listen to the stories of these women who've overcome all kinds of stuff. It's been amazing. We've been doing it since 2019. The end of 2019 was when we started going in, and then a couple of lockdowns. At the moment, we're still locked out, but we're trying really hard to get back in. Yeah. Because the kids really respond so well to it. They love the program. Like they love coming to the program. Like we go in there, we take them like snacks and stuff. But, we're talking about girls who, especially the Indigenous girls, are off country. Yeah. They don't know anyone. They don't get visits. They can't get visits. And so, our program was like the highlight of their week. We're going in there, we're doing art, we're bringing speakers in to talk about all kinds of experiences. And they were getting a lot out of it. And even some of the girls that were in the program in juvie have popped up in the community, because I run another program in Blacktown for girls who are at risk of entering custody. Okay. And I've had girls from juvie rock up to that program and stick around. So Like it's amazing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You've mentioned the Indigenous female inmates, and we talked about that before, and the high representation of them in the prison system. But you also think they're disadvantaged even further in the system.
Yeah, I do. Like I saw it, you know. Yeah. I think like we need to have like more. I don't know. I think it needs to be treated as a crisis.
Yeah.
Because it is a crisis, and like I think that the resources need to be like really focused on, you know, culturally responsive solutions.
Yeah.
Instead of like, you know, white people standing up in front of the room and going, "This is what you need to do." Like we need to just shut the fuck up and listen. And listen to what their elders are saying.
That'd be a novel idea.
It would be, wouldn't it? Yeah. And just listen to what their elders are saying and their communities are saying about how to heal, and then give them the resources and funding to do it. Yeah. Because, you know, they've got solutions in their community. We're just so ignorant that we can't hear them or see them.
Yeah.
And the women that I met, the Indigenous women that I met in custody, were very much disproportionately disadvantaged. Like the crimes that they were in for, ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, the length of sentencing, ridiculous.
Yeah.
The access to support post-release, non-existent. You know, and their stories.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And their stories, no one wants to hear them.
Yeah.
You know, I want to hear them.
Yeah.
But like, I felt really sad.
They're lost in system as a statistic that, well, it doesn't really impact on us because we're not Indigenous, so it's not going to...
And the kids are automatically taken away. So they're removing Indigenous kids at the moment at a higher rate than they did during the stolen generation.
Yeah.
And that's not being talked about enough. So I found a real... I don't know, like it lit that fire even more in me, that I was like, this is such bullshit. Like that people need to give a shit about what's happening to the Indigenous women in this country. Like they're some of the most passionate, beautiful, soulful women that I've ever met, and their stories, like what they've endured, remarkable. Yeah, and so I can sort of advocate from a limited view on that, from the white woman's perspective, but I really think that we need to do more.
Well, the way you talk about it is so respectful because, as you've said, a lot of people say this is what they need to do, and that's just so ignorant. That, we've got to listen to what they want and what will help them from their perspective. Yeah, but I'm exhausted with all the stuff that you're doing, but we haven't got you out of prison yet. And I can't finish the podcast with you still in jail. We've got to get you out.
Yeah.
So, how long did you serve?
My sentence ended up being 2.5 years. I got 14 months on the bottom, which means I served 14 months in custody, and then the rest I served in the community. So I was on parole. And I had to do regular check-ins with my parole officer and, good behaviour and all that sort of stuff. So I was officially released from prison in February 2017.
Right.
And I basically spent about 3 months in the community, kicking around Redfern, staying in a homeless refuge in Redfern.
Tell us about that. So when they open the prison door, you walk out. Do you get your clothes back that you came in with? Or was that the 90 and the hoodie that you got arrested in?
Yes, they gave them back. I didn't actually put them back on. I got my sister to send me some clothes in, and they barely fit me because I'd put on, I don't know, 15 kilos or something while I was in there. Which is a really common occurrence for women in custody.
You were saying that because you don't have the access to the gym equipment?
No gym equipment, no special diet, no healthy food, no fresh food. It's just shit.
Mate, you're just sitting around.
Yeah, and you're just sitting around eating. So, put on weight and, got released, and I wasn't able to stay with family for different reasons, so I ended up going into a refuge in Redfern. And I just had basically the clothes that I was wearing, and that was it. Like my worldly possessions was like a few things that I brought back from jail, like letters. I kept all my letters from jail. And I went to this refuge, and the people there were lovely. They were really, really nice.
You didn't trust them at first, but did you?
No.
You thought, what's their angle?
Yeah.
Is that because you've come out with a jail attitude?
Yeah, well, I still thought, I still had this, I don't know, I didn't trust anyone, obviously, but also like with some of these helpers, I really thought a lot of them had the angle, like an angle. Like, what's your angle? Are you going to try to make me like believe in Jesus or something? Like, I didn't know what they wanted. And sometimes when people are kind and they just want to help, it does come across like that. Yeah. Like you can't possibly just want to help me for the sake of it.
Good person.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Like there's got to be some angle. Like, what do you want from me? You know, so that was a bit of that with these people, but it ended up being that they were just lovely, kind, helpful people. And again, like, you know, I went and put myself in rehab. Yeah. I knew that I'd been out for about 3 months and I started to feel really insane. Yeah. And I started to feel like if something doesn't give us, you know, I'm going to drink.
I knew that just one could be the downfall.
Well, I knew that I couldn't. Yeah. Like, so my dad's an alcoholic.
Right.
He hasn't had a drink in 17 years.
Yeah.
I knew that it could be done. And I knew that I didn't know how, because everything was like, what happens is there's a stressor, like something happens, like you'll have an event or an emotional event or something will happen and you'll have a big feeling, and the only way that I've ever dealt with that in the past was to drink.
Hit the drink.
And so I'm having this big feeling and I'm thinking, I can't drink, what do I do? So I was starting to get really bad and have the panic attacks were getting bad. And one woman told me when I was in custody to go to an AA meeting. So that's what I did.
Right.
Took myself to an AA meeting. I think I've been out for 11 days. I went to an AA meeting and I started to get some support through those meetings.
And that helped?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like massively. There's an entire program, AA and NA.
Yeah.
It's not just meetings. Like, you don't just turn up and tell your story. Like, there's a whole program around healing that happens in those rooms. And if you work the program, you actually get the healing.
Right.
So it's pretty amazing how it works. So, yeah, I was slowly working through the program, still working through it.
And that's a continuous thing?
Lifelong, yeah.
Okay.
But it keeps you sober and keeps you clean, and it allows you, through doing this program, it gives you the ability to interact and to deal with all the things that a normal person deals with, like stress, you know, the death of a loved one, life.
Back to, what's the point? I'll go have a drink. Yeah.
So, like, it gives you the ability to deal with life on life's terms. Like, you can deal with all the things that life throws at you without having to resort to drugs and alcohol. And that, without that program, I don't think I would have been able to do it. Yeah. I have learned so much. It's been great.
Yeah, well, it comes across in the way that you're talking about it. I can see that it has had an effect, because there would be a stigma coming out of prison. Is there? You know, it's something that you carry with you. Yeah,
like I can't get insurance.
Yeah.
Like, I can't get loans. Like, there's so much that I can't do, but I don't let it stop me.
Yeah.
You know, I can get around stuff, you know, but I just I think the most damaging thing was how I saw myself.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
I think really, like, that's why the program that I run in Juvie, it's really focused on building the girls up from the inside out. We want to reverse that you're a bad kid narrative that you've internalized to deep down into your core.
You believe, self-esteem.
Yeah, you believe that you're a worthless human being. Like, let's turn that around. Yeah, okay, you committed a crime. That does not mean that you're a bad person. You're actually someone who's worthy of redemption. You're worthy of a job, a home, a car. You can have all those things if you do the right thing and you reach out for support. You deserve to have a nice life just like anyone else. And, like, that's what we're trying to tell these girls, and that's what I needed to tell myself, because there was a part of me when I got out that believed that I would never be employable, trustworthy. You know, I had to learn all this little bit by little bit.
And on employment, you've used your art for employment too. You're a tattooist now.
Yeah. So I'm a tattoo artist. You know, that was a journey in itself, because in New South Wales, if you've got a criminal record, or if you've been in custody, you can't hold a tattoo license.
Yeah,
so they've originally rejected me on the grounds of not a fit and proper person.
How wrong would have that been? How destructive?
It felt bad at the time, but I understood that it was just a bureaucratic response to me applying, and because I'd had an incarceration, it was an automatic hell no.
Yeah.
So I appealed it. And
Yep.
I wrote them a really like strongly worded letter. And basically, there's that tenacity coming back again. I was like, no, I'm not taking no for an answer. Like I got support letters off all my therapists, my counselor, my sponsor, my boss, and I sent through this really really good appeal, and they granted me my license.
Right.
So I have my license, and now I'm tattooing, so it's really good.
And you're busy, I know, trying to book you in for the podcast. You've got plenty of work on, so you must have a good reputation with your work. Yeah,
like I'm working up. My partner and I are about to open our own studio in Sydney, and so we're so I'm working doing that, and also my my social work doing the Healing from Within program. Yeah, that's keeping me really busy, but I'm like really passionate about it, and I feel really blessed to be able to do this work. Like it gives me so much purpose.
Yeah. So with what you've learnt with your journey of life to this point in time, what parts would have you changed, or where could have you changed if you had to change something, or are you glad you've gone through the journey?
I think it was all meant to happen.
Preordained.
Yes, to a certain degree, yes. The only thing, like looking back, sometimes I wish I had a little bit more self-belief.
Yeah.
But I understand why I didn't.
Yeah.
And that, I think, brings me to kind of believe, like with everything, the way you see yourself, your self-esteem and your self-worth, it underpins absolutely everything. Like everything comes down to that. Like I really believe that.
Well, you're coming across as very zen-like and peaceful and confident. So
I'm medicated. That's the other thing. Yeah, I got my mental health sorted. So very important. No shame in medication. Like I was nuts before I got onto medication, and
that's helped you.
The rehab that I went to helped me to see that I needed it, and I'm okay with needing it.
Yeah.
And it really does help balance my emotions, and I'm able to achieve a lot more because I take my meds,
Right.
And I do what I need to do to
Were
stay.
you diagnosed with something in particular?
Yeah. So I'm diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress.
Right.
And anxiety.
Okay.
Yeah. So the complex post-traumatic stress is something that's been from childhood.
Yeah.
And that's only treated through therapy and like just ongoing therapy and counselling. But the medication, the way that helps is that I don't have these gigantic mood swings anymore, and my moods don't derail me anymore.
Right.
I'm able to have like a bit more of an even keel, and I'm able to achieve the things I need to achieve without having big meltdowns.
But you're not coming across as stunted. Like it's not just this one. You've got the highs, the lows, but just
they're just not as extreme.
Rein them in a little bit.
Yeah, they're not as extreme. Like my moods used to ruin my whole day.
Yeah.
If I had an up or a down, that would take me out for the whole day, and now that doesn't happen. So I've made the choice to do what I need to do to look after my mental health. It's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well, look, I think I've really enjoyed the chat, and you've given us an insight that, and I put my hands up. I was ignorant of the difference between women and men in prison, and I think it's almost like, I'm always talking about prisons and prisoners, but not from the female perspective, and you've given us a good insight into what goes on there, but also your journey in life and how you've come out this end, and you're doing such good work. And I might say that you're not just talking up a big game here, because last time we were talking, you interrupted our conversation because someone had phoned up that was going to self-harm.
Yeah.
And you had to interrupt our conversation. So people are leaning on you, and so full credit to you.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think it's really important work, and I feel really privileged that I can do this work, and that the young people feel like they can reach out. But there's nothing that overly special about me and what I'm doing. Like at the moment, I'm only working 1 day a week doing that. Like, and I guess I tell this to people all the time. Like, we can all make a difference. Yeah. We only need to take half a day or 1 day out of our busy lives to find a charity or a non-for-profit that you like, preferably not one of the huge ones because they're doing okay. But
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and go and see if you can help out. Like the amount of joy and satisfaction and purpose that it brings to your life is just so huge. And like I constantly get told like, oh, it's so amazing what you're doing, but I'm thinking it's not that amazing. Like I'm just putting in a little bit of effort in a concentrated area that I'm passionate about. And imagine what the world would look like if we all did that, It would be pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
And your story's pretty amazing. So
Thanks.
thank you so much for coming on I Catch Killers. I've really enjoyed the chat, and good luck with everything you got happening in the future.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Cheers.